Good morning, George. Here we are in your home in New Harrington, and you've very kindly agreed to do an interview, a video interview, which forms part of the college's Equality and Diversity Week.
Right.
When and why did you first start writing, George?
Well, that stimulus came from you, Jeff. You might recall that a while ago you rang me up from where I can't remember, suggested that people might be interested in my life story, as it were. And I had written The Battlefield many years before. I'd written it as an episode for Dad's Army. And I'd just got a computer and I'd put it onto Word, then I'd saved it, and from that point on I'd lost it. And it had been in cyberspace for years. Anyway, you did ring me again after a while and said, "Howie, are you doing anything about this story of yours, George?" And in the meantime, I'd found The Battlefield. So I thought, to keep you off my back, I sent you an email and I attached the story. And that's how it all started.
Do you remember the first story you ever wrote?
Aye. I remember it well because the teacher gave us the cane. And what it was we had to write a composition about we'd been off school for the Blackberry Week. And we had to write a composition. And I did write one. And in the story I wrote, I described the blackberries on the bramble bushes as being ivory black. And this teacher disputed there was such a thing as ivory black. Well, of course there is. I mean, what they used to do was, when they were producing ornaments or whatever out of ivory, the chippings were calcined, burned, and then ground and burned with linseed oil, and they produced a superb carbon black. Anyway, he didn't believe us, so he gave us the cane. So I remember it well.
Yeah. Since you wrote The Battlefield, George, what do you think of the response you had so far?
Well, I've been surprised. First of all, two people have took the trouble to review The Battlefield, and both of them wax lyrical on what a good story it is. So that was good. They also gave me a 5-star rating, which again was as good as you'll get. And the other thing is, I've just been to America where I saw my granddaughter and grandson, and there's lots of subtle signals tell me that I've moved up a peg from where I was because I've written this story. So that's interesting too.
When you're not writing, George, how do you spend your time?
Most of the time I enjoy cycling, so many days around the year I'm out on the bicycle. It keeps me fit, it keeps me strong. I was 5'9" when I was a soldier in the 50s, and I'm still 5'9". I use the bicycle to tour. For example, in the spring, my daughter and husband came from America. We put the bikes on the train and we cycled to France, and we cycled from Saint-Nazaire east on the Loire River, which was superb. And then in the autumn I was cycling in North Carolina on the Fear Peninsula, which again was a wonderful trip because it was 75 degrees. I was in the deep south with all its glories out of cotton and tobacco. So most of the time I'm bicycling.
So now might be a good time to remind people just how old you are, George.
Next birthday I'll be 79.
And a fine specimen.
And a fine specimen, yeah.
So are you working on anything at the moment, George?
Yeah, I'm busy writing another story, and it's a real event. It was the first trip my wife Maureen did with me. We took the bikes on the aeroplane, flew to Mallorca, and spent a superb couple of weeks cycling around that very, very beautiful island. So that's the next story, and it'll be called La Hostal.
And when do you think that's likely to be published, George?
Early in the new year, Jeff. Early in the new year.
Good. Have you got anything in mind that you want to work on after that?
Yeah. When I was teaching, one of the most satisfying things I ever did was create, run, manage what we called the Garth Project. And essentially what it was using a 2-acre site in Westoe Village, which is the cocktail belt, if you like, of South Shields. On this 2-acre site we were converting that into a public park. And it was the vehicle to teach young people with learning difficulties to improve their reading, writing, number, to raise their aspirations and expectations, to teach them the disciplines of work and the various skills that they would need, and out of that many of them got work. So that was a great deal of fun and a fine adventure for me.
Okay.
I'll be writing that up.
And of course the Garth Project is the project for which you received the MBE.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you felt when you received the MBE?
Well, I was thrilled. And the good thing about that was it came in June of 1989, and by then Maureen, my wife, was ill, very ill. So she learned about it, she knew about the MBE. Unfortunately, she did die the following Christmas. So I didn't get to see the Queen until well into the, round about the back end of February 1990 was when I saw the Queen, and she pinned on that medal.
Did she say anything in particular to you that day?
She did, aye. She was obviously well informed, and she knew about the Garth Project, because she said to me, "And how is the Garth Project getting on now, Mr. Bidare?" And I looked at her and I said, "Well, Mum, I just don't know, because they gave me the sack." Well, that really tickled the Queen. She went off into peals of laughter. And of course, when the Queen laughs, everybody around her laughs. She was really quite delighted with that response of mine. And it was a hugely fun experience, except that it took an inordinate length of time. I got there at Buckingham Palace at 0830 hours on that morning, and I didn't see the Queen till 1330 hours in the afternoon. And in all that time we didn't have a cup of tea or any sort of refreshment. And most of the people that were in my corral, if you like, where all the MBEs were grouped before they saw the Queen, most of them were men, well in their 60s and 70s. I was in early 50s, but towards the end I was actually holding an old guy up because he was in such a torrid state with the long delay in seeing the Queen. So that was the negative side, but for the most part it was positive, it was exciting, it was fun, and it was a unique experience, Jeff.
That's a great story. Thanks very much indeed for your time, George.
My pleasure.